Hey everyone, welcome to the brand new Equality Florida Safe and Healthy Schools team. I think our team is skillful, exciting, and hopefully entertaining. One interesting thing about me is that I love plaid. You might not be able to tell. And patterns, and above all, bow ties.
Well, I don't know how interesting this would be, but a fun fact about myself is I am double jointed, which means I can flex my joints in a really obnoxious, sometimes unsettling way.
So I guess something interesting would be that I am the co-owner and producer and co-host of a social justice podcast called The Unpack Project. So my best friend and I started it after the murder of George Floyd, and it's work that is near and dear to my heart.
In addition to the daily work that we do to support Florida district leadership and staff, we have all started to embark upon and develop new programs work, and that's what we would like to share with you. Hey friends, Ez Rodriguez coming at you. I'm the statewide Safe and Healthy Schools Senior Manager with Equality Florida, and I use they, them pronouns in English. Uso ellas en español.
Hi, so I'm Noelle Dela Cruz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a Safe and Healthy Schools Manager with Equality Florida. But I also come into this work as a licensed and nationally certified school psychologist and certified child and adolescent trauma professional. I've worked in public schools for almost 2 decades as well as private practice. And so I've seen firsthand the hardships that LGBTQ+ students and families face in many of our schools and communities. But I've also witnessed the positive and lasting impact of providing inclusive and affirming care to all of our students, particularly those who are the most vulnerable.
Hi, so my name is Janie Joseph Ruiz, and I serve as the statewide Safe and Healthy Schools Manager for Equality Florida. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and this work is important to me because as a queer Black woman who grew up in South Florida, I rarely saw positive representation of the LGBTQ community.
I do this work because I really believe in a world where each and every student and family is seen, respected, and supported. I really think that every young person is valuable and talented, and they have so many gifts that they lose when they're forced to try and survive in unsupportive and hostile learning environments. So our team, by sharing astute and legally sound guidance with our Florida administrators, educators, and staff, we can help guide staff and districts to build safe and equitable schools where students can be themselves, they can thrive in their academics and personal relationships, and they can grow to be full, authentic humans. So one of the ways that we have responded to the overwhelming calls for immediate assistance and support from LGBTQ+ young people and families is working with our fantastic community partners. So I myself have been heavily involved with the Florida PTA since the beginning of my position. For the past 2 years, I served on the DEI committee for the Florida PTA, and we coordinated educational events, provided a myriad of workshops, and hosted the PTA DEI breakfast and luncheon events, where we got to give prizes and awards to the best elementary, secondary, and county councils across the state for their DEI work. So my term came to an end this summer, and I thought that I would finally have a break from formal committee positions for at least a year. But the Florida PTA, they had other ideas. They asked me to assist them in chartering the very first statewide PTA that would exist to serve and advocate for families, educators, students, and other allies whose focus is creating safe, supportive, and respectful learning environments and communities for all students, and especially our LGBTQ students and families. I was elected Vice President of Legislation and Policy for a 3-year term on the executive board of our new Kaleidoscope PTA. The statewide chapter is open to all LGBTQ+ and allied families, caregivers, and community members. Our member hub page is up and functioning, and our landing page allows members to sign up to be part of this growing statewide PTA. We also have quick links and a page to national and local resources for families and kids. And we're moving forward with our outreach plan right now to invite more members, to get more people involved. We're going to be going through Centerlink and other trusted community partners like GLSEN and PFLAG. For more information on how you can get involved or your friends can get involved or other families, please go to flpta-kaleidoscope.memberhub.com. We're currently in our 3rd year of guiding the Equality Florida Youth Leadership Council, or YLC for short, And the Council is a unique program that provides LGBTQ youth from across the state of Florida with opportunities to build deep and meaningful relationships, develop their leadership skills, community organizing, and more. So each session, our council members come together to learn how to mobilize their peers, how to put together presentations for different events. Each year, the class puts together a proposal for the All Together Now conference. And for the last 2 years, the students have had the unique privilege of being one of the only groups to present a workshop that are all youth leaders. They also work with distinguished guest and keynote speakers like Michelle Rayner, Representative Michelle Rayner, and they're actually working on a project right now to propose to Michelle that centers on getting 16 and 17-year-old students in high school to become educated about voting and to sign up early to vote. Well, this program has existed for the last 2 years. We've also been working extensively to expand the longevity and continuation of our members' participation well after they've graduated. For example, this term, a student from last term came back and did a presentation for our new council members on LGBTQ History Month, and it was very well received. We also created a survey to better assess each of the students' individual interests from the past, and we put together a database of intersectional opportunities, such as working with immigrant rights, Planned Parenthood, Big Brothers Big Sisters, and so on. So when they're done with their council time, they might want to volunteer for Equality Florida or one of our partner agencies. One other way that we offer the students continuing opportunities is to support them in being panelists and speakers at state and national levels. They talk about LGBTQ equity, identity, their own stories. And this month I was able to plan and moderate a panel of 4 students as they told their stories at the AMLE 2020 Global Conference in Orlando. So this is actually the largest gathering of middle school administration folks, educators, and staff in the world. They brought a room of educators and administrators to tears and cheers with their heartfelt stories of challenges and successes. Our department's also been deepening our cross and co-departmental work with other programs at Equality Florida. So this summer, I was able to work with Nicole Parker, the Director of Trans Equity, to initiate our very first parent and family cohort within Equality Florida. So this is a Transaction Parent Network, or TAPN, and after the current legislation was passed, we had a multitude of families and parents reaching out due to the vague, uncertain, and downright scary nature of the new laws. And we responded by inviting parents and families to join together to design specialized events that would meet the needs of everyone who was coming and asking for help. So our first event was called Know Your Rights. We had over 200 registrants for the event. Not all 200 showed up, but we had a good showing. And we featured presentations and panels with legal experts, Florida school board members, representatives from our strongest nonprofit community partners, and parents. So through education and providing resources, many of the parents and families reported that they felt more empowered around sending their LGBTQ children back to school this year. And we're currently working on our next event with that cohort, which will center around the mental health needs of LGBTQ+ young people and families. Over the last 6 months, I've also been able to work with 3 incredible school board candidates here in Pinellas County. And one of the highlights was working to support Caprice Edmond in her bid for re-election, which she won hands down during the primary. And she's a very vocal advocate and ally for the LGBTQ+ community and for all children. And the exciting part is that she is now serving as the Pinellas representative on our school board advisory committee. It's so important to make connections with the community, and being able to be a guest speaker at events is one of the ways that we form and grow those relationships. So in October, I was able to be a guest speaker at the University of Tampa. I spoke about the intersections of communication, language, intersectional justice, and advocacy for students who are studying their master's in communication at UT.
Working for Equality Florida has been really fulfilling. It's nice to be a part of an organization and team that shares common goals and where I feel my values and work are in alignment. It hasn't come without its challenges given the political landscape, obviously, but honestly, I feel like our team is so strong that there really isn't anything that we can't overcome or accomplish together. Right now is a really challenging time for student services staff members. So, student services staff members consist of school psychologists, school counselors, school social workers, and even licensed mental health professionals. And they're really on the front lines when it comes to dealing with student mental health. But unfortunately, the safety and mental health of Florida's LGBTQ+ students right now continues to really be one of the most contentious issues related to comprehensive student support. And our students and our families are living in a time and a climate where their identities are under constant attack. And ultimately, House Bill 1557 has really impacted the ability of student services professionals when it comes to affirming the rights and welfare of students, including things such as the right to privacy and consequently then students' willingness to access mental health services through their school. As we know, it's becoming increasingly difficult to gain direct access to school districts given the current climate. So we're really looking for other points of entry, such as collaborations with various professional mental health organizations, to develop partnerships and gain alternate routes to providing resources to student services professionals across the state. So in order to do that, I've been working to really build deeper relationships with organizations such as the Florida Association of School Psychologists, or FASC, the Florida School Counselor Association, or FSCA, and the Florida Association of School Social Workers, FASSW. And through those collaborations, one of the projects that we worked on was developing and finalizing a recorded training on trauma-informed care for LGBTQ+ youth. And the intention is for that to be shared with districts across the state to upload into their online professional development systems. That training was developed specifically for student services professionals, and it's really meant to empower student services staff to understand each of their roles in creating safer educational and therapeutic spaces through a model of trauma-informed care, as well as teaching strategies that help foster accepting behaviors in parents and in families. In terms of resources for House Bill 1557, I assisted the Florida Association of School Psychologists with creating a guidance document that consisted of an interpretation of 1557 and the potential impact on the practice of school psychology in the state of Florida. So I worked on the committee that built the document, and I played a large role in crafting much of the language within that paper. So one of the projects that I'm working on to really make sure that we continue to provide access to these supportive services is that I'm leading the development of the Mental Health Advisory Committee, which is a coalition of diverse professionals in the fields of psychology, social work, counseling, social services, and we're all dedicated to legitimizing LGBTQ+ identities and advocating for protective measures for LGBTQ+ students within our schools and within our communities. So one of the projects that I'm working on to really make sure that we continue to provide access to these supportive services is that I'm leading the development of the Mental Health Advisory Committee, which is a coalition of diverse professionals in the fields of psychology, social work, counseling, social services, and we're all dedicated to legitimizing LGBTQ+ identities and advocating for protective measures for LGBTQ+ students within our schools and within our communities. So I'm really excited to see the impact of this committee, given the expertise and experiences of our members. In addition to this committee, I also sit on the Florida Association of School Psychologists Diversity Committee, and my role on that is to specifically assist FAST with policy and programming for LGBTQ+ youth. The other project that I'm leading is a collaboration with the Health Equity Department. So this project is meant to really expand connections between school district support services, community-based mental health organizations, and healthcare facilities that contract with school districts to provide therapeutic counseling services and intensive case management. So statewide and regional presentations are so important because it really allows us to impact a large audience of statewide professionals in a uniform and efficient way. So one really amazing opportunity was when I spoke on a panel for the American Bar Association. They have a Council for Diversity, and they had a webinar that was discussing the emotional and psychological impact on anti-inclusive legislation for K-12 learning. So it was a different audience than usual, and there was a lot of engagement and concern and eagerness to help. So that was a really unique experience that I was able to take part in. Another exciting win was when all of our proposals were accepted for the Florida Association of School Psychologists, Florida School Counselor Association, and Florida Association of School Social Workers conferences. They all had conferences in October and November. And I had the opportunity to present to the school counselors from across the state at the FSCA conference at the end of October. I also was able to speak on a panel for the Tampa Mayor Youth Council to discuss suicide and depression in LGBTQ plus youth. And it was just so inspiring to see the next generation of leaders involved and invigorated about creating change really in all the right ways.
Sure. So I worked in higher education for about 6 years prior to my time at Equality Florida. And during that time in higher education, I worked mostly within diversity, equity, and inclusion. At Florida Atlantic University, I oversaw the Office of LGBTQ plus Initiatives and Allyship. And through that position, I implemented programs, policy, and procedures to foster a safer environment for queer, trans students of color, as well as LGBT students. Altogether now is the premier conference for Florida's K through 12 educators, centering on LGBTQ plus best practices. And it is quite the lift, but that lift is made easier with the support of our steering committee. And the way in which I am able to succeed by putting this conference together is through working with our steering committee. And so we meet several times leading up to the conference. We discuss details of the conference. And I really do my best to hear everyone's perspective and take from everyone's area of expertise to inform how we decide to build out the conference. This year's conference will be incredibly unique because our districts have seen the devastating effects of recent legislation which targeted LGBTQ students and their families. Altogether now will serve as a critical space for districts to unpack and elevate novel issues and focus on being as responsive as possible. It'll serve as an opportunity for leaders to find solutions and discover how they can course correct. Sure. So this year has been really exciting because I've had the opportunity to present at national and regional conferences, as well as state and local conferences. Some of those conferences include Teach for America, where I was asked to provide an opening keynote speech, as well as the Florida Council Against Sexual Violence Conference. I was also most recently asked to provide a panel discussion or serve on a panel discussion for the LGBTQ plus Quality Care Conference here in Miami, Florida, that is hosted by SunServe. And as well this year, I provided a webinar or a session for the Orlando Strong Conference, a conference that was born out of the tragedy which took place at Pulse nightclub in Orlando, Florida. That conference is hosted in partnership with the Contigo Fund. I think that the work that we do within the Safe and Healthy Schools Department has always been critical, but especially now. I believe that we need to keep leaning into our work within the school districts that we support and continue to branch out into the districts that we haven't been able to really make progress in. I think that our work, so long as we continue to foster a visible network of support within the communities we service, we can make progress in reaching out to families of LGBTQ youth and ensuring they have the tools they need to advocate for themselves and mobilize and make sure that their voices are heard. Another great aspect to the work we do is silo busting. It is very rare that districts have an opportunity to come together in a space where they can share their issues and also share some feedback on how they've overcome some of the hurdles that they're facing. And so I think that us being able to provide spaces where folks can be vulnerable, share about their issues, and understand how they can find solutions to what's taking place within their district and within their schools is something that our districts really value. And so I think continuing to lean into that work, continuing to lean into the work that we do with our with youth through the Youth Leadership Council, with our webinars, and ensuring that the families that we come into contact with and our community members know as much about advocacy as possible is how we can continue to move forward in impacting the state of Florida in the most positive way possible.
Thank you all so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed our team updates. We would also like to give a giant applause to our brand new Safe and Healthy Schools Director, Ian Silgestrom. Our team's so fortunate to be able to be supported and guided by such a strategic, organized, and talented leader. Ian is also kind, funny, and a good friend. Just don't leave him with a cat in a hurricane. Okay, Safe and Healthy Schools over and out.